Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 119. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. Pretty quiet weekend on the Steelers front. Couple things to talk about as we inch closer and closer to the 2025 NFL Draft. Good sports weekend, though. The Masters took place, and Rory McIlroy, his first ever Masters on a crazy Sunday. I'm not at least a golf aficionado, as last episode proved when I thought it was an Oakmont for half the week, but crazy weekend, can appreciate that. So, Dave, I know you're a big golf fan and you enjoyed that Sunday, and happy for Rory to get that first Masters win.
Yeah, I like watching the major events, and specifically this time of year for the Masters and all. So it almost feels like spring is sprung type of thing, and it seems the way the NFL calendar lines up every year, get a chance to really kind of focus in on that. And I like the history and the tradition of the Masters and everything that goes along with that. And but what I know you kind of paid attention to it, at least on the back nine there with Rory McIlroy. Did you get the sense? I got the sense, oh man, this is going to be a dud. When he was, I don't know, what was he, 14 under or 13 under, and had like a, I don't know, 3-4 shot lead. I was thinking, oh man, this thing's going to be anticlimactic going into the final 5-6 holes and all. And then he did what he did on 13, and obviously got tight and all. And then I think, what did he do? Birdied 17 or something like that, but then missed the putt on 18.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, when it was announced that it was going to go to, or we knew that it was going to go to a playoff, I thought, oh man, he's going to end up losing this, because he's probably so mentally spent of the ups and downs from 13 on. And the other guy was over on the practice range, and it felt like it was set up for Rory to lose that thing. But on that first playoff hole, obviously when he made that good second shot there, it started to look up, and his reaction was priceless. Big monkey off of his back, and I was rooting for him, to get that first green jacket and all. But there was obviously some drama there from the 13th hole on, and it made for a fun Sunday overall watching that thing.
Yeah, for sure. So not as anything as exciting happening in Pittsburgh's world right now, but that drama will start here in just about a week and a half. I think, 10 days from now, the 2025 NFL Draft will begin Thursday night in Green Bay. Dave, before we get into a ton of draft talk we have today, quick programming note. We're going to have the live stream on YouTube tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the one that was supposed to happen last Monday. But me coming off my surgery was just not going to work. And so we pushed it to this Monday. So those who want to hang out, ask some draft and other Steelers questions, you can follow and find Dave and I on my YouTube channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Dave, let's also talk about some NFL news at large that is not direct Pittsburgh Steelers news, but we know the NFL is a domino effect world, and what happens to one team can change Pittsburgh circumstances indirectly. We found out some pretty serious news on Saints quarterback Derek Carr. Apparently has a serious shoulder injury that could impact his 2025 season. And we already knew the Saints were odds-on favorites to draft Shedeur Sanders, and this may increase those odds even more. In fact, it has, according to odds makers, increased the odds of them taking Shedeur Sanders at number 9. Is there also any chance of now an Aaron Rodgers situation where the Saints could angle for him? That would seem less likely, but we can certainly talk about it. So your reaction to the news here? We still don't know exactly the timetable and specific injury on Carr, but something obviously that the team deems serious this far out that could impact the fall for him and may change this team's quarterback plans.
Yeah, that was quite a surprise when that hit, to learn that. It would be interesting to find out, really how serious it is. But I mean, at least on the initial reports, it sounds like, he can miss a lot of time, at least at the start of the season and all. And look, even if Derek Carr was 100% going into this season, odds were probably pretty good that this would be his last, and the Saints would be looking for a quarterback. And obviously, they got a new head coach in Kellen Moore, and I think a lot of people were trying to connect the dots maybe to them and Jackson Dart, and I think Moore was at that Ole Miss pro day, but it would make sense. I mean, right around the corner, why wouldn't you kind of go to that anyway? And especially if you're looking at a quarterback there. So I don't know. My thoughts all along was that Shadur Sanders would not make it, past the Saints should he fall that far. Starting to think that might be even more of the case here. I think the real wild card here at this point is Shadur Sanders, the second quarterback on most teams' board? Is he the third? Where does Jackson Dart play into all this? How much in love could the Saints potentially be if they have the opportunity to draft either one of those guys in Dart, Shadur Sanders? But I think at its core, my main takeaway is you really got to consider the Saints, even higher maybe than going into the weekend as potentially drafting a quarterback at their pick. They're at what is it, 9 overall there. So it'll be interesting to see over the course of this next week if we get more information on the seriousness of Derek Carr's injury, and if indeed he's going to need surgery. Is this going to shelve him for the entire season or most of the season? But it was just a shock overall that of the news in totality of the nature of it.
We already knew there was some early off-season speculation about Carr's status with the Saints, new head coach in Kellen Moore. Could they look to really start over? I think that speculation will only intensify in terms of them targeting a rookie to turn to either this year, assuming Carr misses time, or at the least next year, if Carr's may be able to have a better and quicker recovery than initial prognosis right now. We're not as plugged in with the Saints as we are with Pittsburgh, and so I can't tell you exactly what they think and how they feel about Shadur Sanders. But I would just say the team beyond Pittsburgh that Steeler fans should be watching the most on night one is the Saints at number 9. Do they go quarterback? If so, who? If they don't go quarterback, then where does that leave Shadur Sanders? And so we'll be watching the Saints very, very intently along with Pittsburgh at number 21. There's also been some reporting from guys I trust to cover the Saints, like Nick Underhill. They really like Tyler Shuck from Louisville. So maybe they pass on Shadur Sanders and they take Shuck in the second round or something like that. I don't know all the draft picks right now in New Orleans. So obviously can't make heads and tails of it, but I'll just say, obviously, this news will only intensify and increase the odds and motivation for the Saints to pursue a quarterback, which was already, I think, fairly high pre this Carr news and will only raise after the fact. So a situation for Steelers fans to watch incredibly closely.
Yeah, then the Aaron Rodgers discussion coming in there, it I don't know. I'm not buying. I think looking at over the cap right now, they have $27 million in cap space. The Saints do right now, and I mean, you could obviously fit another contract in there, especially if it was like a 2-year deal for Aaron Rodgers.
And they love void years in the Saints, right? You could use a ton of void years to get that deal done, right?
Yeah, I'd have to look a little bit deeper into that. I'm also looking to see if they have much room for any more restructures at this point. Looks like maybe what's Demario Davis? No, he's got void years attached to his deal, so there's probably not much. I mean, they could do something there, but I'm willing to bet that they won't there. But looking at some of these base salaries and potential restructure candidates that they have, Taysom Hill, it looks like they could create $5.83 million there. I mentioned Demario Davis. Looks like they could create 4.1 million there, but outside of those two guys, does not look. I think they already restructured Derek Carr's contract, so there's nothing else to be gained there. And what does he have as far as guarantees and all? this year. I guess they could potentially. They have 1.255 guaranteed salary this year that they would obviously eat, and it looks like other than guaranteed money with Derek Carr this year, it looks like it's just 1.255. So his base salary. Now they've got a lot of proration. They would eat a lot of dead money on his deal if they were to, I guess, part ways with him. But I suppose it's not out of the question. Just looking at his contract, the way it's posted on over the cap. Overall, once again, you'd have the huge dead money hit on him. But as far as guaranteed money, there's not a lot involved there. But then you have the whole cutting him with the injury thing, and probably some sort of you'd have to wonder about injury guarantees. Did this injury happen as a result of him playing? Was this a training aggravation or something along those lines? Something that we don't know as much about. So once again, I will be interested over the course maybe of this next week if more comes out about the Derek Carr injury. On the surface, though, if they didn't cut Derek Carr, if the injury's not serious enough, I kind of wonder if really Aaron Rodgers would be in play there.
Yeah, it's tough to go sign Rodgers when you already have that big contract of Carr on the books. And also, if you're Rodgers, is there a compelling reason to choose the Saints over the Steelers, a team seemingly New Orleans in a worse position to win than Pittsburgh is right now? I don't know the motivation for Rodgers to do that. Maybe there's a connection on the coaching staff that I'm unaware of. I hadn't looked at it too closely. Don't know what their potential background between him and Kellen Moore, who played in the NFL for a time. Maybe there's something there to be talked about. But it would just seem unlikely overall. I suppose it is a reminder, though, the quarterback situation landscape can change in an instant and an opportunity can open up. And some have argued that Rodgers is waiting to see if anything like an injury does occur. And although those odds are typically pretty low, this has happened with the Saints. Maybe Rodgers thinks it could happen somewhere else and wants to wait things out. Who knows? But that's the update there. I think the draft is more plausible route in which the Saints acquire a quarterback than signing Aaron Rodgers, but we'll be watching it all throughout this next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and the Aaron Rodgers wait continues on this week.
Do you still have that draft deadline that's been talked about a lot? Even some reporting from James Palmer, who believes there's some patience that's being lost inside that building, and a clock could potentially be put on Aaron Rodgers around draft time. Do you still think that that's when this team needs to know, needs to tell Aaron, we let you wait long enough? Are you in or are you out before the draft in 10 days?
It's hard to know for sure, obviously, but what did Art Rooney specifically say? We're willing to wait, but
not forever.
Not forever. Yeah, I guess you'd have to term what not forever means, but I can't help but think that this team would like to know by the draft.
I think they would like to know, but I've argued I don't know if it changes their plans too much, because if you love a quarterback long term and Aaron Rodgers is not the long term option, then take that quarterback either way. And Rodgers should not get mad about that, knowing the landscape, knowing he is the short term rental, not the long term fix of this team, of this quarterback room. So I've had the personal deadline of OTAs, which I believe starts. When is the first official OTAs? I know that's been released. Pittsburgh is not doing the full OTAs this year. It's in May. Do we know?
Yeah, we know the dates. Off-season workouts will start May 27th to the 29th, and then June 3rd to the 5th.
Okay, and then the mandatory minicamp June 10th through the 12th. So my deadline would be by the 27th when the team comes together. They will technically start getting back in the building 1 week from today. You can go back. You can start phase one of the offseason, which is weight room really only activity. So that is kind of the first step. But in terms of getting on-field work with coaching, with a real practice feel, it's going to be that May 27th, aside from rookie minicamp, which of course Rodgers and veterans will not be participating in anyway post-draft. That is my personal deadline. I understand the draft deadline. We'll see if Pittsburgh has one. Mike Tomlin said there's surely not. Art Rooney seemed to contradict that to some degree, but forever is a long time. we don't know what that deadline is for Pittsburgh.
Is Skylar Thompson eligible for rookie mini camp?
I don't believe so.
Has he got
Would
enough
have to
time?
check. I think because he's played in all three,
Okay.
at least
He
two of the
probably-
seasons he's played in.
Yeah, he probably doesn't. So as of right now, this team doesn't even have a quarterback that can participate in rookie minicamp.
That's not uncommon, though. I mean, I
Right.
don't know if they had one last year. They're going to sign an undrafted rookie free agent. They'll bring in some tryout guys, and so that's how they'll fill out the rookie minicamp. Also, Skylar Thompson and Murray Band this weekend. So congrats to the Thompsons.
And obviously there's a chance that they draft one as well too.
Of course, yeah, obviously for sure on that, but at least there'll be an undrafted free agent and some rookie tryouts. According to this is not Steelers, we don't know this on Steelers, but I'm just reading this from Ian Rappaport right now. We should get some Steelers pre-draft visitors this week. Cam Scatterboo from Arizona State has 2 pre-draft visits this week. Rappaport does not say to who and to where, but we'll watch that considering all the homework Pittsburgh is still on the class. Could Pittsburgh be on Scatterboo's list? We'll have to wait and see. Just want to mention that because it popped up on my phone right now.
All right, and it probably wouldn't be surprising with all the running backs that they have brought in for pre-draft visitors. This is an exciting 2 days because I think we have tabulated that there's 6 open spots. A couple of guys that I think we know are coming in overall, and I think there's 3 unknown spots. So hopefully during this show sometime we will get who today's visitors are.
Yes, the 3 reported who have not officially come in yet are quarterback Kyle McCord from Syracuse, a late day 2, day 3 selection, big arm quarterback, Ohio State transfer, and a pair of running backs in Jaden Blue from Texas, the big home run hitter with the fumbling problems, a day 3 guy, and RJ Harvey from Central Florida, who's squatty, highly productive, with also big play kind of speed. He's probably in that late day 2, early day 3 sort of camp. So those are 3 reported, not official, to come in with those 3 open spots that you mentioned, Dave. Hopefully we'll get to have the full list basically by, say, Wednesday show or Friday show at the latest.
And hopefully one of these coming in is Kenneth Clark, or Grant. I mean, I don't know why I keep trying to call him Clark.
I think you got the Packers D tackle on your mind, Kenny Clark.
Yeah. Kenneth Grant out of Michigan is the one that I'm really wondering will come in this week.
Let's talk about that. Let's segue to the draft. And it's funny you mentioned that because I spent last night going back through some Kenneth Grant tape to really get a good feel for his game as a possible round 1 option for the Steelers. Dave, if you wanted to talk about kind of a Derrick Harmon versus Kenneth Grant, 2 dogs, 1 bone, if you're sitting there 21, if quarterback's out of the equation for whatever reason, the guys aren't there, you don't like what's available to you at number 21. If it comes down to D-line, which is such a serious need for this team, has always felt like the favorite to be drafted by Pittsburgh in round 1, although the team's lack of interest in top prospects until very recently was, I think, putting that into question. But certainly would not be surprised to see this team have interest in draft a Kenneth Grant or Derrick Harmon. They're 2 different prospects, though, despite being big defensive linemen, first-round caliber guys. I don't think they're the exact same type of player. What is your take on Harmon versus Grant? Do you have a preference? Should the team have a preference? What are your thoughts?
As the draft gets closer, and why I wanted to make this a topic today is the fact that what if I am kind of mixed in my thoughts on if both Grant and Harmon are on the board at 21, which one would be the best fit? Which one would be the best prospect for the Steelers to select there? I've got a strong feeling that that the ultimate pick will be one of those 2, but I'm struggling as to which one it might ultimately be, especially if both of them are on the table. And you're right, they are a little bit slightly different players overall, and I come down on it on this. I think Derrick Harmon is the more position flexible guy that you can move around on the defensive line overall. I think Kenneth Grant is more best suited to play from the from the B gap on in, and really more predominantly in, over nose at the NFL level. Whereas Grant, I mean, whereas Harmon, I think he can play some over the nose, but I really think he's more B gap on out
Mhm.
from there. When you look at the style play on both of those guys, I view Kenneth Grant as the better run defender, top to bottom, by a little bit over Harmon, but I view Harmon as the more the better down by down pass rusher and producer in that area. Now, look, I think it's marginally close when it comes to those two guys overall, but I without a doubt I think Grant is the better run defender, and I think Harmon is the better pass rusher.
I might be opposite with you. I would say Grant is the better pass rusher right now, and Harmon is the better run defender. On tape with me with Grant, I was a little underwhelmed by the run defense there, despite his massive frame and ideal size and body type for that big interior guy. I didn't think he held up against the run as I thought he would. I didn't think he was impactful. I played a little too high. Thought he didn't control blocks as well as he should. I thought he was a really good penetrator with really good hand use that defeats down blocks well and understands lanes or angles of departure with offensive line and can beat those gap schemes. But I thought in some of that two gapping situations, even one on one, because he wasn't getting a ton of doubles with Mason Graham on the other side. Graham was getting so much attention as their marquee defensive lineman. I didn't think Grant was as stout at the point of attack as I thought and kind of expected him to be.
Hmm. I have the difference of opinion in there. I thought from the tape that I watched that Grant was the better run defender, top to bottom. Now,
Okay,
not
fair.
once again, I think it's close with those two.
Hmm.
But I thought top to bottom Grant was more of an unmovable force overall in there. Now I think both of them have some missed tackles on their tape and all. Where when it comes to pass rush stuff and all, I think Harmon is much better, a better plan, longer arms. I think sometimes Grant gets caught up in the minutia of trying to be too fancy at times and just not try, not complete the assignment. You know, I think I think he gets too cute at times with his pass rush plan.
There's definitely a more finesse aspect to his game. I thought the bull rush with Kenneth Grant was not there. Again, going back to that power not translating to the size. I thought he's got really good hips. I think he's got really good hand use to be able to swipe, to be able to swim. That was really effective. I thought Harmon's maybe a little bit tighter hipped overall. I don't know. I think the hand use is a little less developed than where Kenneth Grant is at. I think Harmon's bull rush is better though overall, a little stronger, a little more power rusher than Kenneth Grant is right now. I still like Harmon a ton. I think he's a really well-rounded guy that can rush the passer, that's able to play the run. As you said, can play up and down the line. That's an attractive characteristic of his game as well. I just kind of view him in two different guys, where I think Harmon is a little more of that older school, two gapper, well rounded type, and Grant's a little more new age, one gap, get upfield, penetrate, disruptor, then kind of take on and eat blocks the way that maybe a nose tackle in Pittsburgh would be looking to do. My comp for Kenneth Grant, I was trying to find a good one, was Linval Joseph, is my official comp on him. With Harmon, I had a Leonard Williams comp, and there's certainly some Cam Hayward vibes to his game as well. So, I like both players, but I thought I would like Kenneth Grant a little bit more, especially knowing what Pittsburgh needs, which is somebody that can really anchor and take on blocks in the run game and free up linebackers like Patrick Queen to maximize their ability. I was left disappointed, to be honest with you.
Okay, but you do agree that Grant's more of a B gap in player, whereas Harmon's probably best suited from the B gap out, right?
Yeah, I think that's their best fit. I think Harmon is that classic 3-4 defensive end, 3 tech, 4 eye. That's going to be his fit. He can move around, no question about that. I think Grant is a really interesting athlete. You see him on run stunts, looping as a pass rusher, even dropping into coverage occasionally. Had that fumble return against USC where he got the ball ripped out by Woody Marks, but you kind of see the athleticism. I think Grant is certainly, I think you framed it well, B gap to B gap type of a guy. Primarily Harmon more defensive end. So There's a difference also in where you play them. There's a big question in Pittsburgh. Do you want more of a defensive end type to replace more one-to-one Larry Ogunjobi, Cam Hayward's successor, or do you draft that nose tackle, potentially kick Keanu Benton out, who may not be ideal, in the middle, let him play some more defensive end in your base 3-4 and those 25% of the snaps in which you use it, and that's kind of how you reset the defensive line. That's also a separate but important question for this team. But yeah, Grant is more he's gonna be a nose tackle, and Harmon to me more defensive end in Pittsburgh system.
Which one, if drafted out of the chute as a rookie, has a potential logging more snaps in this defense?
Well, I assume if you
As a
draft
rookie,
Grant,
as a
you're
rookie.
sure. If you draft Grant, I assume the plan would be kicking Benton out. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, so even knowing that, I still think Harmon would have the edge to play more snaps immediately, but there's certainly a path to playing time for both. But I would give the edge to Harmon.
And what about in sub package situations? How much, because of the pass rush deficiency of things that he's got to work on. And I've seen a few interviews where he's admitted that things that he's got to work on. He's got to be a more consistent, more viable pass rusher.
Which one is this, Harmon or Grant?
Grant.
Grant. Okay. I think they're pretty similar. They're both going to be the third man in the rotation, where it's Hayward and Benton as your top two in nickel packages. So that I think the snap count will be pretty similar in terms of who's going to work in nickel more often.
Is there a chance, and let's bring a little bit of Walter Nolan into this. Is Walter Nolan, pound for pound, probably the better prospect than both of the two?
Yeah, I don't think it would be unfair to say that. I think his highs are really, really high. I just go back to scheme fit, and there is reportedly, according to Bob McGinn's article, some character ish concerns that still have not been, I think, fully crystallized. And I'm always careful to talk about those things without real concrete evidence of, okay, what is the issue with this kid? But there are some worries there. But yeah, I think from an on field standpoint, Nolan is still probably the best talent.
How surprised would you be if Nolan was the second defensive lineman off the board after Graham?
Not surprised. I think the current expectation is for that to play out. Will that occur on draft night? Who's to say? I think Nolan again is a little scheme specific, and does he fit Pittsburgh? Ideally, I would argue potentially no, but no, I think the expectation right now is for Graham to be the first defensive lineman taken, and then Nolan following him after that.
Yeah, I agree. And Nolan was one of the first guys that I talked about coming out, going into Senior Bowl weekend and all. And man, you just very explosive player. I think he's got a potential to be a star in the NFL, especially if he winds up in a 4-man front.
Absolutely, yeah, I can totally see that. It feels maybe a little boom bust there. Pittsburgh has not shown much interest. Could he come in for a visit this week? Potentially. If he doesn't, without Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan being at the Ole Miss Pro Day, I know Andy Weidel was there, but to me, Nolan may not be the fit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Nolan comes in this week, especially with there supposedly being some character. And we don't, you get into this part of the season, a lot of stuff comes out the closer you get to the draft and all, but I don't know how much truth there is to that. I have watched interviews on all three of those guys, and they come off as very good interviews. Just watched the one with Chris Sims with Grant. He's a very likable guy, and so is Harmon. So I could definitely see one of those two guys, and it got me, when looking at it looks like Kyle McCord is visiting the Steelers today, but we already knew that, right?
We knew he would come in. We didn't know the exact day, so it's a minor footnote. So yeah, we should hear hopefully the others too. Hopefully we'll hear what other players are coming in for a visit today to start checking those boxes.
But as I did some study over the weekend, I did get myself in a position where I kind of wondered if both Kenneth Grant and Derrick Harmon could potentially be on the board at 21 overall, and wondering which way the Steelers would go there if indeed that was the case.
Who would you personally take? I know this is not about us and our thoughts and feelings. It's about the teams. But if you're making the decision and it's Harmon versus Grant, who do you take?
Because I think of how well-rounded Harmon is overall, and also with the measurements and all lining up a little bit better overall than say a Kenneth Grant, and because of the concerns of maybe Grant being more of just a B gap to B gap player, I would hang my hat on Harmon.
Okay. I would take Harmon as well. Better run defender. To me, the higher graded player on my board. I don't have an official grade on Kenneth Grant. I didn't write the report on him. I did on Derrick Harmon. I think the first report I did was on Derrick Harmon. So
Mhm.
kind of identified him really, really early as a potential Steelers type of a guy. So I would go Harmon as well, pretty confidently and pretty comfortably, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
yeah. I think it's an easy choice there.
Right, right. So we shall see what the team does. We'll see if Grant comes in for a visit. Now, again, there was that mentioned by Jerry Dulac in a chat last week that Pittsburgh went to Michigan for the pro day the night before and then flew back that night, I suppose, to meet with Aaron Rodgers and did not officially attend the actual workout in which Kenneth Grant did work out after having a soft tissue injury that limited his combine activity. So did they meet with Kenneth Grant? Was it officially Tomlin Kahn who went? It was still a little light on the details, but that may have been able to check that box enough because if not, obviously not attending the official workout day. Grant, so far not coming in for a visit, would on paper take him out of play for Pittsburgh in the first round, unless we assume and believe that pro day dinner was with Tomlin and Kahn and Grant and company that checks that box.
Can't help but thinking about, was it Harmon doing the hoop drill at the combine that I
Yeah,
posted the
I think
video
that
on?
was you mentioned that before, so I believe that's what you're referencing. It wasn't Grant because he was hurt.
Right. That was a fantastic couple of reps that he had in that Harmon.
I wish you would have done the 3 cone during the pre-draft process to get some agility times on him. I don't believe he did so at his Oregon Pro Day.
Let me make sure that's what I have in my feed here. I'm pretty sure that's what
Yeah,
it
I know
was.
you've talked about
Yeah,
that.
running the hoops. Yeah, I've got it up here. Yeah. And
There might be
Harmon ran what, 4.97 unofficial, 40, 177 split, long arms, nice height. I mean, he really, as far as what we've seen over the years and what they look for, matches up.
Yeah, Dave, with Harmon, just one other kind of footnote here, and I don't know all the details. Obviously, I'm just reading this off of an Instagram, couple of stories that Derek Harmon posted last night. And he's a guy that's talked about being really close with his family. I believe his mother's battled some health issues in the past. And Harmon posted some things last night on Instagram. His mother does not appear to be doing too well right now. So Derek Harmon could be having a pretty heavy heart on draft night. Hopefully not, but I just saw that just going through my Instagram stories late last night. And so he's a guy that think is a Detroit native and homegrown, went to Michigan State, going to Oregon, transferring and going out west was a really big deal for him. Talked about really leaving his comfort zone, but it's really been maybe the best thing for him. He had a breakout season with the Ducks in 2024 and could parlay that into becoming a first round pick in 2025.
And I think a good thing with him, at least when part of the transfer, is he was at a Big Ten school in Michigan State before doing that. So he had good tape at Michigan State in a Power Five conference, obviously, and productive and all before going to Oregon, where he obviously had a very good season with them.
Right, right. All right, Dave. Where to from here? Any other thoughts on Grant versus Harmon? Anything else to discuss there?
No, no, just one of those things that kind of popped in my mind to have a kind of a tit for tat on those two players.
All right, let's talk about my latest what the Steelers look for study, looking at athletic and physical baselines and thresholds to see who applies to the 2025 class, doing running backs this weekend, and 2 running backs checked every single box. Now, I will say I think in terms of all the studies I do at positions this year, running back may be the least reliable to bank on because Pittsburgh may be looking for a different type of running back as opposed to the old school big power bruiser they've been drafting historically under Mike Tomlin. So I don't want to take this one to the bank, but the 2 running backs who checked every single box are 2 names who certainly appear to be on Pittsburgh's radar in North Carolina's Omarion Hampton and Ohio State's Quinshon Judkins. Hampton came in for a visit. Pittsburgh at the Ohio State Pro Day to watch a bunch of guys, including guys like Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. So those were the only 2 that checked every single box and, certainly fit the mold of a Pittsburgh Steelers back.
I tell you, it will be quite interesting to see a back drafted in the first, let's say, 3 rounds, under 5'9".
Yeah, it hasn't happened. I guess maybe Tree Archer, technically the last one, technically speaking, even though he
What
was
round
not.
was Anthony McFarland?
Was he under 5'9"? He was fourth rounder.
Fourth rounder.
He
Okay.
was short. How tall was McFarland? Exactly.
You've got 5'8", 5'8.25". Was he
Okay.
that
All right.
was he that small?
Apparently, so I stand
Okay.
corrected. It wasn't Archer. It was Ant Mac.
Okay. But he was fourth round. Ooh. I mean, it would be Baron Batch, I guess, but he was what was he, seventh rounder? Baron
Hmm.
Batch back in 2011.
Yep.
But it would be a little bit of a change. But look, the NFL is it, and this is where I was going to go with this. Is this a trend in the NFL now that you know it's okay not to have that 5'10", 5'11" running back?
Yeah, I don't think the height's going to matter as much. I think with Pittsburgh, what might change is the size in terms of the weight, not needing that 225-pound workload, three down back, because that's how they've been drafting running backs. Najee Harris, Rashard Mendenhall, James Conner, Le'Veon Bell. We're going to get the bell cow in here. We're going to get the three down guy, never comes off the field. Somebody's got to have the size to absorb playing, 75% plus of the snaps all season long. And so if you're in a committee approach, which Pittsburgh will likely be with Jalen Warren and Kenneth Grant and the incoming rookie, not going to need to have a guy be that big to carry that load. And they want someone who's a playmaker, someone who's dynamic. And if you get those guys that are bigger, they typically aren't quite as explosive.
All right, in this study, as opposed to other ones, and due to the combine and pro day and thing, guys, not can you circle back to last year's uh, what the Steelers look for? Did you do one on the running backs, and did you include things like the short shuttle and three cone?
The criteria didn't change. It does not include the shuttle drills. There was no correlation there, but I have not done a running back study in a couple years because I just knew they weren't going to draft a running back, and so I just didn't spend the time on doing one. I think our last one was maybe 2023, and so I have not done a what they look for at running back in a couple seasons.
How much do you think that plays into the shiftiness of the running back when it comes to them?
What exactly do you mean in terms of the
I mean,
shiftiness?
obviously you don't have times on these guys, but they put them through the drills, and they've got a good sense of the shiftiness and change of direction and all like that. I just wonder where that ranks up in there as far as uh, if you had a short shuttle time per se on these guys.
Yeah, I just don't think the correlation was really there with the last with the previous selections. I don't know how many of those guys participated. I mean, the benchmarks for the position right now are again size based really. It's 5'10", 220 plus. The 40 time is almost irrelevant. Sub 4.7 is my threshold. Vert a 29 inches, broad a 9.5. And so there really has not been a correlation there. But I do think that's going to change where they're going to sacrifice some size for some speed, some big playability. But, Hampton offers that certainly. Judkins can offer that. Some of the guys who are one box away also have, some Steelers ties. Ollie Gordon missed only in the bench. He's kind of got that classic old school size build to him profile. He came in for a visit. Woody Marks from USC is interesting. Rocket Sanders from South Carolina. Your guy, Damian Martinez, he only missed because he did not bench. Taj Brooks, who's gotten some true Le'Veon Bell comparisons, also just missed in the height category. So some other names to mention as well.
Was Brooks one of the guys they brought in or no?
No, Brooks did not come in, or at least has not come in for a visit. No,
Okay.
but apparently the scouts had told him at whatever bowl game he was at, the Shrine or Senior Bowl, that they kind of compared him to Le'Veon Bell. That's it's a high comparison. It was specific to the vision and kind of patience. He runs pretty close to Bell. No one is exactly like Le'Veon Bell. His style was so unique, but Brooks really has a high degree of patience and kind of that wait, go. Also, I think he's a really good receiver. I think he's going to carve out a role as an excellent third down back at the NFL level.
Where did Travion Henderson miss here?
I will have to check and pull it up. It's probably just from lack of participation in something. And also probably, weight, because the weight requirement is still there. That's where, again, it might not This year's criteria may not be the most reliable data, but I'm sure he missed in the weight category. He also missed in the bench because he did not bench during this
Okay.
process.
All right. Okay. I was interested to read that over the weekend.
All right, Dave, where to from here? Let's see, what else do we have? Let's kind of some little housekeeping going back to the NFL today. Former Steelers cornerback Patrick Peterson expected to announce his official retirement. It's almost been confirmed for a while now, including by himself. He's mentioned he's essentially hung up his cleats, but he's going to be in Arizona, the team that drafted him, where he spent most of his NFL career, to officially hang up his cleats. Spent the 1 year in Pittsburgh in 2023. No, it was not a great year, but I always appreciated his veteran insight and honesty, and seems like a really good dude. So kudos to him on, frankly, probably a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, that's something kind of we expected to take place. I did not play last year and all, and kind of had kind of draft post ready to go whenever this was to happen, and it sounds like it's going to happen today. So kudos to him, and it'd be interesting to see if he ends up being. He's going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think it's just a matter of will he be a first ballot guy or not.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. I don't know how often and how easily he gets associated with that as maybe other players do, but 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All Pro, was a great punt returner early in his career, Hall of Fame, all 2010s decade team, guy with 36 interceptions. It's a Hall of Fame resume. You're right. It may take a little bit for him to get in, and we've talked about the Hall of Fame requirements now seem to be a bit stricter, and that's limiting some guys getting in. But I think he'll get in eventually.
I do as well too.
Dave, had a video I've been meaning to make for a while now. Finally got around to it for yesterday on Broderick Jones, and what a big year 3 it is for him. I don't think anybody's facing more pressure and needs to have a good season the way that Broderick Jones does, making that shift over to left tackle. It's really a make or break season after that tough regression his sophomore season, injury, maybe lack of confidence, certainly hearing the criticism and just struggling overall. Did a video breaking down what I think is his number one issue that is really entirely correctable. And it just comes down to focus. He's just got to be able to lock in. There were so many mental mistakes, so many missed assignments last year, things like not knowing the snap count, not knowing the play, not knowing your individual assignment, weird communication issues with Zach Frazier. There were so many moments last year. I posted 2 of them in the video where he would visibly be frustrated after the play and immediately go up to Zach Frazier and have some communication with him. Maybe that's on Frazier. Maybe that's on Jones. I don't know. But the point is, these things have to get ironed out. These things can't be persistent problems. And, Jones certainly has a lot of things to work on technically with hand placement and getting his head out of blocks and keeping his hands tight. But I think even more fundamental than that is just knowing the play, just doing the football one-on-one, one-on-one, doing your job type of stuff. And that was an issue last year, Dave.
How many times last year did I say, man, it sure seemed like a lot of communication going on between Jones and either James Daniels when he was in there, or Mason McCormick when he was in there, or I guess even to some degree a few snaps with Spencer Anderson over there as well too. There was a lot. It seemed like a lot of okay, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, there was clearly that confusion, and it's a good point, and some have made it as well that maybe when you play next to a rookie and Mason McCormick, since Daniels went down in that Week 4 Colts game, maybe that stress communication where somebody like McCormick is not going to be as active and as clear of a communicator as a James Daniels, a veteran, would be. Maybe that's an issue now that Jones flips over and say Maulu's on his right side now next to him. Maybe that will help, but still things like knowing the snap count and knowing your assignment and knowing the play. There was that play against the Raiders last year. People probably remember it, where Jones thought it was a run, it was a pass, and Max Crosby comes in free off the edge, and fortunately Justin Fields is able to escape. And that's Aaron Rodgers. He's not escaping Max Crosby this year, Dave. And so just stuff like that has to get cleaned up. You got to trust this guy. You got to be able to trust that Jones knows what he's doing. It didn't happen last year. It's got to change. If that same stuff continues, even if the play gets a bit better, he's not going to be the answer.
Looking at him overall, the amount of penalties that he had overall, he had 10 total penalties, I think, second on the team, two 2 declined. Yards 74, nullified yards produced by him, easily led the team on offense with 86 nullified yards. 4 of his penalties ended up in stalled drives. Van Jefferson was second or tied with him on the team with 4 stalled drives as well too. And you look at the penalties overall: unsportsmanlike conduct, false start. He had 5 offensive holding penalties. He had 2 false starts. He had 2 unsportsmanlike conducts and a face mask. So he checked a lot of boxes on a lot of different penalties there, and I think it's concerning that he had 5. No, I believe one of those ended up having a touchdown called back or something. Was that against the Giants
I believe
or
so. Was that the
uh
Pickens touchdown, I think?
might have been, but I thought maybe one of those was kind of questionable. But 5 offensive holding penalties. You got it just goes back to what you said. Got to know assignment. Got to execute, and not get calls on yourself and all. If he changes at least those 2 aspects of his game, that will surely help him. Now, beyond that, if you were to note a second thing that stood out that he has to work on, what would it be with Broderick Jones?
The second thing to work on in this game, is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then it goes back to, I think, post-snap technique. I think keeping his hands tighter, having a much better first punch, the first significant contact that Pat Meyer preaches, that is the core of his philosophy. I didn't see that with Jones enough last year, keeping his head out of blocks. And so, once you get past doing your job and knowing what your job is, the actual execution of his job, I think his hand use overall must improve in a pretty big way.
How much level of comfort will help him with going back to the left side?
I know it's an easy thing to look at, and Pittsburgh certainly has had a bad habit of moving these guys around, which is disruptive and creates more projection. But I don't want to pretend like left tackle is going to be the cure-all for that. It's not going to make your punch necessarily better. Maybe there's something to be said about him being more comfortable throwing an inside hand, his right hand now being the inside hand. I don't know. But in terms of knowing the snap count, knowing your play, those are all regardless of what position. I don't care if you're playing left guard. Got to know your job. Got to know what the call in the huddle is. So, could it be something to help potentially? But he's played a bunch of right tackle. He's played more right tackle than left tackle at this point of his career. He played, I think, pretty well at right tackle his rookie season, so it wasn't like that was an issue from the onset with him. Can it help? Sure, but I'm not going to pretend like it's going to be. You're not saying this, but someone suggested this is not the cure-all. Left tackle alone is not going to fix all of his woes.
How much do you think whatever he was dealing with injury-wise played into that last year, the performance at right tackle?
Yeah, I'm certain it was part of it. He had the wrist and arm issue basically from the first day of training camp, and that seemed limiting. I also think his confidence just really, and I can't speak to this obviously definitively. It's intangible, but it just was, he was not playing confidently. And when you're struggling, when you're hurt, when you're getting the social media hate, and he even responded to it, I think, shortly after a game last year, right? He had clap back at somebody, and I understand the frustration, probably not the best way to handle that. And so that really just kind of snowballs on you. I did think he kind of got some swagger back after the bye. He was playing a bit better. He was finishing his blocks. He was improving. Then things regressed, I thought, more down the stretch when the whole offense tanked. The O-line really sucked. Even Dan Moore had a ton of struggles as well. So the second half of the season was at least a little bit better, but you still just had a lot of dumb issues. You had, remember the wild card game? Both Moore and Jones pulling. That's in the video that I made on that. And I'm pretty sure Jones had it in the wrong. I think Moore was correct if you watch the whole play, the path of the running back, the way the rest of the line blocks. I think Moore was correct and Jones was in the wrong. So again, stuff like that, like not knowing the play, not knowing which side on a dart scheme, who's pulling, left tackle or right tackle. You're in the wild card game. You're in the end of the season. Like that stuff just should never happen at all. But certainly not the end of a season on a pretty core simple play. So that's the stuff he's got to clean up, where he's just not focused, just not locked in, and it's hard to really trust him.
I agree. And this thing all boils down to, look, this is his 3rd NFL season now, former first-round draft pick. You got to know whether or not you can roll forward with this guy past this season and have comfort doing so. And will he potentially, in other words, is this a guy that you're going to lock up to a contract extension heading into his whenever are you going to even pick up his 5th-year option? So this, and you would have to decide that after this upcoming season. So this is a big season for him and the organization, because if this thing goes rocky for him, right now Calvin Anderson's the only really true guy that you have backing up both those positions. We'll have to see if this draft produces anybody, or if this team signs another veteran tackle after the draft per se. But you're gonna be back in the same boat of potentially having to draft another tackle early if this season does not go well for him.
Absolutely. And Pittsburgh's whole plan has been draft the O-line early, heavily invest, which has been, I think, a correct and good approach by Omar Khan. I think it was neglected too often by Kevin Colbert in those final years, but you got to get these guys to develop and play well. And if Jones does not work out this year, you're looking for a left tackle next year, you're starting this process over. So they just can't miss on Fautanu, on Jones. McCormick hopefully has to come along here. Zach Frazier has to continue his good play. You can't invest in this group heavily, miss, and then have to do it all over again. It's just going to really slow your franchise down.
This year, there's no 5th-year option decision for the Steelers, because that would have been Kenny Pickett, correct? So
Correct.
Next year resumes the 5th-year option decisions, and once again, I believe that would be Broderick Jones. And man, this team hasn't had a good run as of late with when it comes to 5th-year option players, and ultimately re-signing those guys to to huge franchise contracts per se. So this is a big season for him. Is a lot of I read a lot of stuff how, you know, I think at its core people are bullish on the Steelers offensive line this year. But is it fair to be overly bullish on the Steelers offensive line until we see it?
Is it fair to be bullish, like to be optimistic about the offensive line?
To be overly bullish.
No, I mean, they got to prove it. I mean, there's hope, and you expect and need this group to play well. I'm not going to say I'm bullish and be like, this group is going to play really well. There's a
Right.
lot of unknowns, a lot of guys that have to prove themselves, none more than Jones. But Fautanu is, essentially redshirted his rookie year. He played all of one game, and didn't even get to see him in the summer that much, because he had that MCL injury in that first half of the Houston preseason opener. Didn't play the rest of the summer, and then plays the Denver game, played more because of Jones' repeated penalties, including that one that negated the long catch to George Pickens, but then dislocates his kneecap in practice a couple days later and out for the season. So, yeah, I mean, the offensive line needs to play well. There's reason to believe it could, but I'm not going to sit there and say this is going to be a great unit. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Right. The most ideal situation, I think, to come out of the 2025 season is, okay, 4 of these guys are good to go. We might have to replace Isaac Seumalo. Perhaps maybe that becomes a left guard need, maybe second round or something next year. But potentially maybe even first round, depending on what the other needs and all look like and all. But that would be the best case scenario, is that four of those guys on that offensive line, not named Isaac Seumalo, give you a very, very good feeling to be bullish on the offensive line heading into 2026.
Right, because you also understand you're likely going to have to replace Seumalo after next year. Could he get re-signed? Potentially, but in his 30s, the play's not been outstanding. He was hurt last year, had the pec injury, but probably not somebody Pittsburgh's going to be looking to really invest in heavily. So you already know you're likely to have to replace left guard next year. There is no really internal candidate who's going to take that spot, with McCormick now at right guard to replace James Daniels. So if you got to replace left guard and say left tackle, then you're really having to spin your wheels on just readdressing offensive line.
Exactly, and that would be worst case scenario for sure.
All while potentially needing a quarterback if you don't draft one in the first round this year. So big year for Broderick Jones, big year for this offensive line. How much blame should Pat Meyer get, especially for these issues? We talk about not knowing snap count. We talk about not knowing the play call. Or how much blame goes on Meyer? Is he not teaching him correctly? Is this just a Jones thing? How do you try to assign blame here?
At its core, we're not at the practices. We don't know how much they're in the playbook and all, but this is his group, man. Somebody's got to take responsibility for it, so it goes on him.
Okay, fair. I think I agree. He has to own the whole group, and we talked about advocating to replace Pat Meyer this past offseason or this offseason. It did not happen, obviously. But I do put those individual things like not knowing the snap count more on Broderick Jones, but just overall, not developing guys, the offensive line not improving as a whole are all reflections of Pat Meyer.
Yeah, you come up with some flashcards or something to help this guy learn this stuff better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not acceptable. I don't care, if you're out of position, you have to know the snap count, you have to know the play call. Those are basic fundamental things that wouldn't fly in high school, let alone the NFL.
Look, there's a lot of onus on this group this year.
Oh yeah, ton of pressure. All right, Dave, where to from here? Let's go back to the NFL draft. Had an article, had a reader remind me we wrote about this before, and so I wanted to dive into it for 2025 on bloodlines, in which NFL draft prospects in this year's group have those, football athletic bloodlines. Pittsburgh certainly seems to be attracted to them, right or wrong. A lot of first round picks with those family ties, Cam Hayward, the Hayward family, obviously Terrell Edmonds, his brothers, his father played in the NFL, Devin Bush, his dad played in the NFL, TJ Watt, obviously, Marquise Pouncey, the list goes on and on and on. And so I just kind of went through as non-comprehensive. You could throw in 20 more players, I'm sure, with bloodlines, but just want to mention some ones that are pretty known and kind of some more obscure ones. To me, my favorite one, and I got to give Dane Brugler a lot of credit. I didn't use his guide entirely for this. Our scouting reports have a ton of research that go into backgrounds on family and that kind of stuff, and I leaned on that. But one I did not know was Bashal Tutin, the running back from Virginia Tech, the big play running back that Pittsburgh has shown interest in, brought in for a visit. His cousin is Isaac Redman, who coached him whenever Tutin was playing youth football. And so that's kind of a cool connection I did not know about. So kudos to Dane Brugler for that. And you don't draft Bashal Tutin because he's Isaac Redman's cousin, obviously, but it's kind of a little cool inside slant on a guy that maybe give you a little more information about him than other teams may have.
And kudos on the True Edwards. Boy, I've gotten old that Troy Edwards' son is now. Where is True Edwards supposed? Is he going to end up being an undrafted guy?
Yes, I think Brugler has him ranked really, really low at like 127 on the receivers. I don't know, Brugler does great work. We love Dane Brugler's draft guide, but whenever he goes in kind of the best of the rest, it kind of feels like not completely in order because he's got, I think, True Edwards behind some guys that he probably shouldn't be behind. Edwards led Conference USA in receptions last year. He tested well his pro day. So he'll be undrafted in all likelihood, but he should be in a camp somewhere.
Prime candidate be an undrafted free agent, right? For sure,
Yeah,
for the Steelers because of the bloodline and because of production and all, and because of the measurements and all.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. I don't know if he'll go somewhere else depending on how much money he gets. Obviously, Pittsburgh pinches pennies when it comes to that. But True Edwards, the son of Troy Edwards, the first round pick in 1999, is in the draft. He's a lot bigger than his dad. He also went to Louisiana Tech like his father did. Troy Edwards still holds the single game FBS receiving record with over 400 yards in a single game. True Edwards don't have that type of a career, but he had a pretty good season in 2024. He tested fairly well. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, ran 4.57, jumped 40 inches or almost 40 inches at his pro day. So that was kind of a fun name that makes us all feel very, very old. But yeah, Bashal Tutin with the Redmond connection, I thought was also pretty cool.
I couldn't help but immediately go look and see True Edwards and his special teams work, and it looks like he got quite a extensive special teams background during his college career, 3 of which I think the last 3 were at Louisiana Tech. 191 total special teams snaps for True Edwards, 139 on kickoff return, 8 on kickoff coverage, 43 on punt return, 1 on punt coverage. So he's got some, and let's look at snaps by position when it comes. We've reached prime draft season where we're talking about an undrafted player and what he did as far as snaps on special teams. But those are the kind of things that interest us. Let's see, special teams last year. Detailed positions, kick coverage, just one snap. Kick return 47, punt return 41. Looks like he was the punt. He was a punt returner on 40 of them. So he
Okay.
does got some return experience here.
Yeah, he had 8 official returns last year for 87 yards. So probably back there for some fair catches and some balls that were not returned. Yeah, not surprising he didn't play a ton on teams last year because he was their starting receiver. He was on Louisiana Tech in 2022 and 2023. Originally started out at Hawaii, so probably was playing more special teams in those first couple of years at La Tech before becoming that number one leading receiver in 2024. Had a big game against NC State, 140 some odd yards, 71-yard touchdown in there, bounced off a couple defenders. So, there's some tape there with Troy's son. And listen, Troy Edwards, I had a video on him a couple of summers back about the Steelers bust series, and he was a bust. He didn't work out, but he was a talented guy. Like the talent was not the issue with Troy Edwards. He was a really athletic guy that made some plays. He just talked about some immaturity that he had, probably overdrafted, probably shouldn't have gone that high. So, not that any of that matters, whether or not Troy Edwards was good or not. It's not going to necessarily impact what his son does, but just a cool little note there on True Edwards.
All right, and you've got, top to bottom, there's different various of draft pedigrees in this year's class. When it comes to this group here, you can't go over this list without talking about Carson Bruner out of. You've got UCLA here.
Is it Washington?
It's Washington.
I always screw that up.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
I just noticed that.
I always screw that up for some reason.
All right, so you might want to change
Yeah,
that.
I'm gonna go edit that right now. But Carson Bruner from Washington. Thank you.
Right. I think most have him tabbed as a mid-round prospect in this year's class.
Yeah, likely day 3, but firmly day 3. Probably, and I don't know exactly where 5th round, 6th round is probably where he'll be drafted. He had a really good pre-draft process, good workouts, so he'll be selected. I just couldn't tell you exactly where he'll be a day 3 guy.
And the Steelers inside linebacker room's pretty full right now, but how shocking would it be if they drafted a Carson Bruner in round 4 or 5?
Would not be shocking. Probably that round 5, round 6, you did lose Tyler Medikevich. You could get some youth in there potentially. So, again, not a big need. You bring in Malik Harrison's going to handle a lot of special teams work, but certainly would not be shocking if he was there in the 6th round and Pittsburgh took him.
All right. And what about a Jordan Clark, son of Ryan Clark, real physical player?
Yeah, I think he's gotten some pre-draft visits, not in Pittsburgh, but not that they need to probably, but he's gotten some attention. So that's borderline drafted. Brugler has him undrafted, but 7th round, you never know where these guys could go. The bloodlines could help, and that's a potential NFL nickel at the next level.
All right. Of this list of people are wondering why you don't have Mike Tomlinson on here. It's because I guess Mike Tomlin didn't play in the NFL, right?
Well, I mean, it was that. It's also Dino Tomlin is literally going to be a tryout player at best. He may end up coming to Pittsburgh, and so I figured people would just yell at me, "Why are you putting Dino Tomlin on here? Nepotism. He's not even a prospect.
Well,
guy caught 3 passes."
Damned if you do, damned if you didn't here, right?
Yeah, and again, you could put 20 other names on this list. I didn't want to put every single bloodline on here. I was trying to focus on guys that maybe a little higher brow than Dino Tomlin. But yes, he would also have bloodlines.
All right. I'm going to ask you to pick your shot here. And obviously Shedeur Sanders is on this list as well. Pick your shot as to the best chance of being a Pittsburgh Steeler of the guys on here, whether it be drafted or undrafted.
Yeah, it's really tough overall. I mean, there's
Would it be a quarterback?
Names. It certainly could. There was multiple quarterbacks, but the 2 drafted ones are Shedeur Sanders. Obvious reason, lay up there, Dion. Also, Jackson Dart, his father, played safety at Utah. Had some injuries there, but I have a clip of him with a 97-yard pick 6 against Oregon. So his father played in the NFL. That's kind of a classic Steelers first round type of a thing. Jordan Clark might be the answer too. I could see him as that 6th, 7th round guy. The Ryan Clark's relationship with Mike Tomlin is really, really close. It's, the training camp each year. They're always hanging out, always have him on for interviews for their show. So I might say Jordan Clark, but it could be the quarterbacks. It could be Carson Bruner. I think Tootin still makes sense. It's who knows.
Who almost did you put on this list, but said but thought it was too long?
I don't think there was
who would have been the next one on the list?
I don't think there's anyone I left off. I mean, I guess Dino was one of them just because I thought I'm not going to put Dino Tomlin, a tryout guy. I forgot. I didn't put Trevor Etienne on there until somebody said, "What about Etienne?" So I put him on there. Trevor Etienne, the younger brother of Travis Etienne. I'd have to. I don't think there was anybody I really intentionally left off.
Okay.
I just kind of it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, all right, that's probably enough names to put on this list. Any other names here that are really worth mention? Aeneas Peoples from Virginia Tech. His grandfather was Doug Wilkerson, who was an all-pro guard for the Chargers. That was kind of cool. Jack Sawyer. He's got a ton of athletic bloodlines there. Not going to be in consideration for Pittsburgh, but that was kind of cool. Gabriel Taylor's the younger brother of Sean Taylor, the Washington Redskins player who was shot and killed, and so that's kind of a interesting story there. But Gabriel Taylor's tape is actually pretty good. I have to report up on him. What else do we have here? And then Brett Gabbert too. I didn't realize this. Came super close to breaking Big Ben's records at Miami, Ohio. He came 5 touchdowns away and 16 passing yards shy of breaking Ben's records at Miami, Ohio. He is the younger brother of Blaine Gabbert, the former first-round pick.
All right, good job on that. That's an excellent read if people are looking for something to fill their Monday with.
Yeah, something a little different to talk about the NFL draft. All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show. Again, a reminder, live stream tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time.
All right, let's get to the email machine real quick here. Tyler Armis writes in, writing from Irvine, California. Cheers to you guys for providing the best Steelers content out there. I know you were asked about draft crushes earlier in the offseason, but mentioned you had not done enough research on the class yet. I'm wondering if you've fallen in love with any prospects in this class. Would love to hear 2 draft crushes from each of you. One that could be a Steeler and one that's just really intriguing prospect that may or may not be realistic. For Pittsburgh. Thank you guys for all that you do. P.S. I'm loving the new iOS app, but would love a dark mode option. I often read before going to sleep at night. Would love the option to make the screen darker. Okay, Tyler, we'll ask and see how hard maybe that is to add to the iOS app. Appreciate the feedback on that. Draft crushes. I'm a huge Tyler Warren fan. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic wherever he lands in the NFL. Walter Nolan is a very, very fun guy to watch on tape. That would be probably a second one of mine there. Let me just look at the top 100 here real quick to see if anybody else kind of jumps out at me overall. Alex, who are a couple of draft crushes that you have so far this offseason?
I think from the category of the pie in the sky, never going to be a Steeler top prospect type, I got to go Ashton Genty from Boise State. Just watching him, throughout the college football season, just electric every time he touched the football. I don't often go back and just watch a player's highlights just for the fun of it, but he's like one of the few guys that I'll go back and watch, and just his contact balance, his strength, his power is off the charts. Everyone knew he was getting the football. No one could stop him. And that's the mark of a really, really special player. In terms of late round crushes, I don't know if I have a singular one, maybe like past years. There's some safeties though. I like Hunter Wohler from Wisconsin. I think he's going to be a really good player at the next level. Only thing holding him back is a lack of true kind of straight line open field speed. And then Dan Jackson from Georgia is a guy just true hair on fire. Going to be just a lockdown core special teamer for the next decade. Probably never going to be a starter, never going to be a Pro Bowl, at least defensively, but he could be a Jeremy Reeves type that makes, multiple Pro Bowls as a special teamer. That is a walk-on at Georgia, worked his way up the ladder, super aggressive, super physical, super intense, great teammate overall, just kind of last of a dying breed. And so really appreciate his story, his play. He's going to be in the NFL for a long, long time.
I think Jahdae Barron out of Texas is another one that's fun to watch on tape. One of the guys from the Shrine Bowl that hasn't got a lot of run as an edge, Johnny Walker, is someone he might even go undrafted for all I know. But I think he's got some nice bend, and I think there's definitely something to work with when it comes to him. So. My list, I think, as far as top guys go, is Tyler Warren and Walter Nolan.
Some other guys that I like probably more than most. I don't know if I'd call them crushes, but I would say I like them more than consensus. Malachi Moore from Alabama, the safety nickel hybrid. Teddy Buchanan from Cal, the linebacker, really athletic. He played up from UC Davis, had a really good season. A couple tight ends I thought were interesting. Anthony Torres from Toledo, although he's older, he's got back issues. Mason Tharp from Texas Tech kind of caught my eye as I was watching the other Texas Tech tight end, Jalen Connors. And then one other guy I'll mention as well is an offensive lineman. I didn't scout offensive lineman super heavily this year, but Torricelli Simpkins III. Love the name. Really like the tape as well. Super physical run blocker. He's also a transfer up kid from North Carolina Central. Is a really punishing run blocker. Some techniques he needs to work on, but I kind of compared him. Remember City So from the Patriots? Kind of compared him to him. Kind of a similar game. Big wide body mauler. That's the guy that really got after it, finished his blocks. Projected to go undrafted. I gave him a 4th round grade. I thought he was, I think there's this really draftable talent there with Torricelli Simpkins III.
All right, be on the lookout for that name during draft weekend. Let's see, Rob Jones about Blues Clues 2025 with an asterisk. Hi guys, thoughts on if we should take out top 30 visits criteria for Ohio State and Michigan players this year. Also, 0 PSU interest. Tyler Warren plus 2 later round DBs. No Wisconsin Badgers either. Has to be a first time in years. 30 visits from these schools. Well, first and foremost, we've got a handful of guys we got to wait to see come in. So we don't have the full top 30 list yet, but he's wondering if in future Blues Clues, if it's not that big of a deal about Ohio State, Michigan players coming in, I guess. And I guess to some degree PSU interest.
Well, I'd have to look back at some of the past years of visits and interest, but whenever you have Tomlin and Kahn and them sending the house to those big pro days like Ohio State this year, typically those guys don't come in for visits because you've already done your homework on those guys. You met them in person, you gotten to know them, know their family some, be around teammates. There isn't as much to explore to use a pre-draft 30 visit on that guy. So I don't know how surprising that is, and yeah, they weren't at Penn State in terms of the Tomlin Con, weren't at Wisconsin, but I don't know, how often those guys come in for visits. And I know Dan Colbert was still at Penn State, and so that was still a higher level front office member. Who was at Wisconsin's pro day? Do we have even Wisconsin? Do we know who was there for the Badgers pro day this year, Dave?
I don't remember.
And we'll try to. That's not part of that's Big 12. Yeah, they wouldn't have had to.
Was that Colbert there?
I will check. I'll pull up the list right now. I do not know who all was there for Wisconsin this year. Let's look it up. I got Jim Ward, area scout Jim Ward attending, but also it's not like Wisconsin has super, super high-end prospects this year. Waller's definitely going to be the top guy. There's Jack Nelson as well, some other guys to look at, but it's not like Wisconsin has, a first-round caliber player this year.
All right, Joe Molinaro. I believe this is Joey Molinaro's dad. He's been a long-time listener to the show. We get emails from him every once in a while. Hi, Dave and Alex. Been a long-time listener. Appreciate your insightful discussions. Your recent comments on the potential for an 18-game regular season resonated deeply with me. The concerns raised regarding players' health and perceived devaluation of games, particularly those late in the current 17-game season, are valid and deserve serious consideration. Many fans, myself included, share the sentiment that the quality of play suffers, diminishing the overall fan experience. Goes on to write, while the NFL's motivations are undoubtedly driven by financial considerations, I believe a purely revenue-focused approach risks long-term damage to the league's integrity and the well-being of its players. The potential for increased injuries and burnout from an 18-game season is a significant factor. Let's see. Instead of adding games, he proposes the NFL explore alternative revenue streams that mitigate the risk to player health. Expansion is certainly one possibility. The substantial entry fees generated for a new franchise would benefit existing owners, markets, fan bases, domestic and internationally. Another less disruptive option might be to strategically implement an additional bye week. This might involve strategically placing a bye week in the first half and second half of the season and still provide an additional week of TV revenue, thereby enhancing both players' safety. I'm very curious to hear your perspective on these alternatives and would appreciate your thoughts on how a balanced approach to player welfare and league revenue can be achieved. All right, Joe, nice, well thought out email there. And here's where I come down on the topic. I am old school. I am traditionalist. I did not like the switch to 17 games. I will not like, and look, 18 game season's coming. We can all try to fool ourselves and try to talk about additional revenue sources and everything that goes along like that. The fact of the matter is we're going to get to an 18 game regular season sooner rather than later. The addition that you have in here about I think it'll come at a loss of some, if not all, preseason games. And I do think that you will see the NFLPA push for, as part of the trade-off, an additional bye week in there. So I think you'll have what comes to ultimate fruition here is an 18 game season, 2 bye weeks with split in the first half and the second half of the season, and the league rolls on from there. And I'm at its core, once again, I am old man shake my fist at the cloud, and really Alex is a younger version at his
Young
young
man
age.
shaking an old fist, yeah.
Right, as well. So I know I know he's going to line up with me on a lot of this, but I don't know about having any thoughts on there being alternatives to this to have a balanced approach to player welfare and league revenue. I think this is just something that we're going to have to, we can throw out maybe ideas and expansion and yada yada, but I think the core of this is just get yourself ready for an 18 game regular season, and hopefully they do put in the additional bye week for the players. But at its core, the league just wants more and more money. They want more games. They want more TV revenue, and to be damned with the players and the player safety and player health. I think there's only one outcome for all this topic, and that's the 18 game season with 2 bye weeks.
Agreed. It is inevitable, which is the phrase that Mike Tomlin even used during the owners' meetings. We all know what's coming, just a question of when and what concessions are made by the NFL. It's a really important question, so I appreciate that. And big fan of Joey. He does fantastic work. I love his Seinfeld bits. They're just so freaking smart and really funny. To the question,
I think they should expand a 53-man roster and all as well too. And practice squad, and I think that's another something that the NFLPA should push forth, because that provides more jobs, quote unquote jobs, for players. So whether it be 2, 3, go to at least a 55, if not a 56-man roster within that. I think that should be part of it. They're already loosening up the IR to return rules and things associated with that. So that might be something else to look at. And I think the NFLPA would be foolish not to insist on, active rosters moving from 53 to, let's say, 56.
Yeah, there's got to be some real concessions there, and the NFLPA better fight for it. Shame on them if they don't. They did not do a good job when it went to 17 games of getting some concessions on the other side as part of that negotiation. You're right that expansion could be an avenue, but as Dave said, the NFL wants it all. They don't want to do just one thing. They want to do every single avenue that can increase revenue, which is expansion of teams, of locations, and of the season itself. I would just say this. I get the concern 100% about how much is too much, and burnout and health and risks and, playing an 18 game season. But I imagine the same things were said in 1978 when they went to a 16-game schedule, and they went to 17 games a couple years back, and the same concerns came up, and kind of just accepted over time. Maybe that's wrong, but I mean, I will say that it probably had these similar arguments and concerns before. The NFL has been making the game safer, partially through rule changes, which are controversial in terms of protection they offer, but also say a lot of helmet technology has also really come a long way. The Guardian caps and those types of things as really, I think, helped improve player safety. So 18 game season is going to happen. I think there will certainly be 2 bye weeks to come along with it. They better have that. I think it's the only way to really have that increase in games. To me, the question is just like, where does this thing end? Are we going to eventually have a 20 game season and no preseason? I think the NFL CBA maximum is to play 20 non playoff games in a year. And so we'll eventually get to that point, and that probably will even happen at some point down the road. So these are just stepping stones the NFL takes to increase revenue. It's a big business, and NFL's all about making money, and they're pretty good at it.
Man, I'm sure gonna miss preseason games when those things finally go away.
Yeah, me too. Me too, Dave.
Let's see. Raphael in here about cash spending and miscellaneous. Hi, David and Alex. Love the show and have been listening since 2013. We got an anniversary coming up here in 4 days, don't we, Alex?
For the site.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very happy. Happy birthday to the site.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that maybe for Wednesday's show.
Yeah. Hi, Dave and Alex. Love the show. I've been listening since 2013. Dave, thank you for the insight on the cash spending. Some know if they sign both TJ and Aaron Rodgers, they will most likely hit close to 100% spending for the year. So 2 questions. What does it look like for year 3 if the Steelers only sign Rodgers and don't give TJ an extension, which I really hope doesn't happen and doubt that it will, he writes. What does it look like for year 3 if the Steelers only sign TJ and Rodgers decides to retire or wait on another team, which I also hope doesn't happen either, because Mason didn't have a good last year with an offensive-minded coach. Not sure why the fan base is so enamored with Mason, as he is really just a career backup quarterback. Thanks for the great work. So I think really the bulk of this question is not really so much Mason Rudolph, but it is more, what if they don't sign either, I guess, Aaron Rodgers this season, or they don't give TJ Watt an extension. All right. Here's the thing. If they don't get to at least 100%, and I'm expecting to be more about 102, 103% of the cap in cash this year, it really sets up for a precarious situation. And cash spending in 2026. Aaron Rodgers obviously would not be in the picture, or would you go out and have to sign yet another franchise quarterback? You obviously hopefully wouldn't have to get to that point. I guess it comes into play. Would you franchise tag if you didn't do anything with Watt this year? And I really would be surprised if that happened. But if it didn't happen, I think you got to seriously consider franchise tagging TJ Watt to lock up some cash spending that way. And then obviously going above and beyond that, maybe. I mean, if you don't extend him this year, why would you
why would you tag him after this year's?
Well, question. I mean, you could tag him, but why would you extend him? And
yeah.
But I mean, yeah. When you look ahead to potential guys next offseason that you're already probably going to extend, you got the Joey Porter Jr.'s and the Keanu Bentons, right? But are either those would be significant contracts, but how would they relate in cash spending significant to what the cap number would be? League wide. I mean, look, I hope that we're talking about Joey Porter deserving to be a top 3, top 4, top 5 highest paid cornerback in the league a year from now. That's a good problem to have. Can Keanu Benton get himself where he's top 4, top 5? That would be a good problem to have. But you really get into this deficiency of cash spending because of not doing so. Even if it is, let's say Aaron Rodgers does not sign with this team. I mean, I think I've got another email somewhere in here. It says, well, what if you do Watt and not Rodgers? Is there a potential that you end up getting in a situation where you just extend George Pickens this offseason? And I guess in theory that sounds fine, but you got to look at this from George Pickens' end of it as well too. You could sign George Pickens to a contract extension this offseason, but you better be careful in doing so when it comes to guaranteed money beyond year one. Is that something that George Pickens is what's the average yearly value going to be, and what's the guaranteed money? And is he going to say, look, you're going to have to fully guarantee more money other than just what I'm going to set to earn in 2025. So I believe that's a conversation maybe to have once we find out what does or does not happen with Aaron Rodgers here over the course of the next several weeks here. But I still would be surprised. I mean, I guess the long and short of the story goes is if for some reason you don't get Aaron Rodgers, and even even if your plan is to extend TJ Watt later on this offseason, you're going to still have somewhat of a cash deficiency there. And would this team consider filling it by signing George Pickens to a contract extension and try to get him to agree to a deal with no fully guaranteed money past 2025?
Sure. I know you're just musing. You're not suggesting they do that, but I just want to make the point and the thought of, yes, you have to get to 90% of spending over the 3-year span, but how much do you let that dictate your decisions? And you got to be really careful about that as an organization to not let the 90%, wag the dog in terms of, okay, we got to hit this mark, and so we're going to sign this player we otherwise wouldn't have extended out. I guess those are good conversations to have come September. We kind of see exactly how things came together. To answer the second question, just briefly about why does everyone love Mason Rudolph? Everyone loves the backup quarterback. That's the most popular man on the roster. So that's the answer on that. I don't really have a lot of other insight about the question itself. We'll just have to wait and see if they don't do something with Rodgers or Watt or whatever the case is there. The only other thing I would add is I had this thought just to kind of go off the conversation we had Friday, Dave, about, TJ Watt, the Instagram photo. What does it mean? Should they trade TJ Watt? Is a good idea. You can't sign, you can't sign Aaron Rodgers and then trade TJ Watt, because you're signing Aaron Rodgers in part because of TJ Watt. So you can try to win now and win for a defense that can still play good football and has been top 10 in scoring in, I think, 3 of the last 4 seasons. And a guy like TJ Watt with 0 career playoff wins, a guy like Cam Hayward with 1 career playoff win. Those are the reasons why you're making those moves. So on the one hand, to sit there and say, we're going all in, we're winning now with Aaron Rodgers. Oh yeah, we're also trading TJ Watt for the future. It's just such a haphazard way to go about it. So for those who argue to trade TJ Watt, there'd be no reason to sign Aaron Rodgers. Now, some would sit there and say, good, I don't want Aaron Rodgers, and more power to you. But, the approach Pittsburgh is taking of why they're pursuing Rodgers and going with this reload, not rebuild, is all about trying to maximize the defense now, which does not include and does not comport with the idea of trading TJ Watt.
Well put. Raphael, the only other thing I can maybe add is if you had a cash spending deficiency this year, for whatever reason with Rodgers or TJ Watt, I mean, you could get yourself in a position where you got to go whole hog into free agency next offseason and do some things that are really kind of uncharacteristic with this team of being top bidders of, say, what positions could it possibly be that you're going whole hog on?
Well, if you're losing TJ Watt, then I guess you're finding another edge rusher. I mean, Herbig's there, but do something else. Who knows? Receiver, Pickens walks.
I mean, a corner, I guess, tackle. Another corner to go along with giving, because you're already going to be in a position where you're going to almost have to give Porter and Benton a contract. It's just it really is hard. You know what, Raphael, I'll be right up front with you right now, of why I have a post draft on cash spending kind of related to TJ Watt, and why I think why I'm almost certain it's going to happen this year as related to TJ Watt, with cash spending being the bulk reason, one of the main reasons behind it. And you've got such a gray area right now with Rodgers and what that contract might ultimately be. Some are in the camp, like I think even our own Ross McCorkle thinks that there's going to be a 4 on the first number of that. In other words, Aaron Rodgers 1 year $40 million deal. And if that's the case, and if he's right, I mean that's $40 million of cash going into 2025. I'm more of the thought. We talked about what Daniel Salib wrote the other day, or pontificated about 25 to 30 million. That's a big cash difference, 15 to $10 million. Now, I think it's easier to kind of guess about what TJ Watt's additional cash will be above and beyond the $21 million base he is. But it's so hard when you've got such a gap of what people think Aaron Rodgers. I'll tell you what, the Aaron Rodgers at 25 million really makes this thing a slam dunk when it comes to TJ Watt. Now, when you get into if Aaron Rodgers comes in closer to 40 million, and then you pontificate or plan out what you think TJ Watt's new cash number will be, that puts you potentially above and beyond 101, 102% of the number.
Mm-hmm.
So just having this gray area out there with Aaron Rodgers and what his market value is or potentially might be as far as a cash number, for 2025, it's a huge hole to have to work around. You know what I'm saying? And that's
He's
why
talked about it for a while.
Right. That's why. Now, what do I think's going to happen? I think TJ Watt gets his money. I think it's easier to predict what that cash amount will be, and the deeper in I get into cash study here for this year particularly, I'm more apt to believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to come in with that 25 to 27 $million cash number. And I think something else that's kind of hard to predict is how much slop is in there versus what the top 53 cash spending is right now versus how many of those guys in that top 53 ultimately don't make the 53-man roster. What's going to happen with a Cole Holcomb? What's going to happen with a Cordell Patterson, even though that's not a lot of cash overall? What's going to happen with Chris Boswell? How much, even though it's not much, how much money do they wind up maybe kicking forward in cash this year? What is the balance of that?
Right. Dean Lowry too, which I think even Pittsburgh forgets. Dean Lowry's a Steeler, but he's still on the roster.
Right. We're not talking a lot of money, but if you start adding up 3 or 4 guys that save you $2 million in cash, you can get to 10 million real quick that way, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's the toughest part. I am once again convinced that this team, and you bring up another thing here, Alex, about the 90% rule. Okay, teams over a 3-year period have to spend at least 90% of the league's 3-year cap total in cash, but that's the minimum. And as a league, the league has to have 95% league wide. And teams like the Steelers more than do their part. I fully expect after this 3-year period ends that the Steelers will be at 97% or higher. And for them to get there, they really have to spend 102 or 103% of this year's cap number based on what we think that we know moving forward, not only past the rest of this offseason, but into next offseason. They've got to spend that money. And obviously that's not going to come on free agents at this point, right?
You wouldn't think so. Maybe something post-draft, but not going to bank on that.
But nothing that's going to move the needle significantly. So I think the biggest question is the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, holding this thing up as far as what you're projecting as a huge cash expenditure coming in, and what if it doesn't?
Yeah, we shall see. I just want to get an answer on Rodgers, and then we'll deal with the contract and everything else after that. I still think the number will start with the 3, so we're kind of all in different camps. Ross is 4, you're 2 to maybe low 3, and I'm in the 3 camp in terms of what that first digit will be on his contract.
All right, Bill Ewan writes in, love the show, respect your opinions, would love to hear your thoughts. Prevailing opinion is to get D-line in round 1 this year and trade up for a quarterback next year. If Sanders falls to 21, why not flip it? He says it sounds like he is the opposite of Justin Fields, great processor and super accurate. Sounds like a golf comparable. He says, I wouldn't trade up for him. And if we had the 33rd pick, it would be a no-brainer. But since we don't have a second, grab the solid starter now instead of rolling the dice next year. Then get D-line and your cam replacement in round 1 next year. Admittedly, I'm not up on the 26 quarterback class, but I hear Drew Aller listed as being one of the great in that class and does not impress me. Point being is all a crapshoot, so why not take your shot now? Here, I think this kind of rolls back into kind of the conversations we had about the Steelers potentially drafting in a quarterback in round 1, and if they are enthralled with, let's say, a Sanders or a Jackson Dart, and if you as an organization have slam dunk first round potential franchise quarterback label on either one of those two guys, and if one of those two guys got close to you, why would you not trade up a couple of positions to get those guys? Personally, I'm not a fan of this quarterback class top to bottom. I've said that time and time again. I went back and looked at some kind of fringe metrics, advanced analytics compared to this class and the questions about this class. And no, I'm not enthralled with it. But if the organization deemed this boils back to what I said, you don't. At some point, you got to have to take a swing for this thing. And no, I don't think anybody can sit here and tell you about how slam dunk the 2026 class is right now. If you get an opportunity to get a shot at what the organization believes to be a franchise quarterback, you almost have to take a shot at it. And even if it means going up a couple of spots to go get a guy, do I think that ultimately happens? No. But I think, and I guess Bill's along the same what he's trying to say here right now. D-line seems like a huge need right now, but D-line's going to mean nothing overall in the slam thing, in the big picture thing of over the next couple of years if you don't find a quarterback, probably, at least when it comes to competing for championships. So it is it's all part of being in quarterback purgatory. And I think I understand what Bill's saying here is if you have a guy and even if Sanders falls to 21, why not take your shot? And I get it at its core.
My process for quarterback is not easy, but it's simple. You find the guy that you believe can be your future of the franchise. You aggressively pursue him. You get him. Ideally, obviously, there's some guys you won't be able to obtain. Number 1 overall type of guy. If you're not picking in that slot, okay, you can't get him. But whoever is attainable, if you love him, you go ahead and get him. Even if that means having to push defensive line to some other later round portion or next year. What's more important? Finding your franchise quarterback of the future or defensive line. D-line's a big need, no question about that. But it's all about quarterback. That is the franchise changer, the franchise mover. Is this the class for it? I don't think it is, but I don't want to get too comfortable either. I've made the point about 2026, and it appears to be a better class, but you never know. You have no idea what 2026 is going to bring. And even this weekend, it was kind of a little more proof of that, where the Tennessee quarterback, and I might butcher the pronunciation here, but Nico Malavia is a guy from Tennessee who is transferring. The NIL issue deal fell through. Whatever happened there, he's going somewhere else. That's a guy that could be projected to be maybe one of the better quarterbacks in 2026. Could he still be? Sure. And maybe even go into a non-up-tempo system will be better for him. But you just have no idea how these quarterbacks will play. Some you expect to do well will falter. Some guy will emerge out of nowhere. You just can't bank on the idea of, we'll just go draft somebody next year, because you just have no idea what next year is going to bring. But yeah, point is, if there's a quarterback you love in the here and now, go get him, and you better hope you're right.
I mean, we will, if they draft a quarterback in round 1, we'll go through the tape and probably find more negative than we'll rip them up for sure. But I mean, at its core, can you fault an organization that is in search for a franchise quarterback for taking a swing at a franchise, what they deem as a franchise quarterback.
No, but you can fault them for believing they made the wrong evaluation.
Right. I will tell you what I hope happens with this team. I'm hoping those quarterbacks are off the board so the temptation is not there, at least when it comes to a first rounder. They draft a defensive lineman and then they take their swing at a quarterback in say round 3 or round 4.
Okay. For me, I would prefer I'm not even sure what I would prefer right now. I don't know if I see a quarterback that's worth the first round pick, even with Shedeur Sanders going back into his tape more. I'm not really convinced. I like him, but don't love him. I like Will Howard. So I'm kind of like either Will Howard in the 4th round or punt is kind of more or less my thought process right now.
All right, so I mean, sort of similar to mine. If they're going to take one, you'd much rather see them take one day 2.
In the sense of I don't think a quarterback is worthy of round 1, but my overall quarterback philosophy is go big or go home, first round or bust. But Howard to me is the rare exception.
Okay. All right.
Just my
Let,
thought.
I think we got enough questions out of the way here. So we'll get back after it on Wednesday here. And do we have any pre-draft visitors in as we close down this show?
I don't believe so.
Just the
Besides the
McCord.
McCord, yeah, that's all I'm aware of. But I'm sure it'll be 8 seconds after the
Sure.
podcast. We'll talk about it for Wednesday for sure, though.
All right. Good show, Alex. Once again, we got the live stream on YouTube tonight. Find Alex Kozora's YouTube channel. Should have a good hour's worth of questions with the draft getting even closer here. We invite everybody to tune in for that. Got some great articles by several people, including obviously Alex Kozora, to go read on the site today. And we'll post these pre-draft visitors when they come in, hopefully later today as well, too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we're doing, want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, hit the ad free and all like that. Who is your favorite if you're listening late in this show? Which one of Kenneth Grant or Derrick Harmon best fits the Steelers if both are on the board at 21? Who would you like to see if you were forced to pick one of those two guys? Which way are you leaning on those two specifically? Hit us up in the email, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. All right, Alex, until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.